Welcome to Retire Right Washington. The team at the Retirement Solution has been helping families plan for a successful retirement. The Retirement Solution helps you learn about strategies for creating income in retirement, managing your wealth, and minimizing taxes. Welcome to Retire Right Washington.
In life, there are many things you can't control, but the good news is that there are some things you can control, and that includes how much you'll pay in taxes. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Mozak, alongside financial planners with the Retirement Solution, Tom Black and Matt Perrone. On today's show, you'll learn ways to help keep more of your hard-earned money and give less to Uncle Sam. Boy, that sounds good. And of course, later we'll put you two in the hot seat. We'll answer our viewer questions about retirement. It is great to be back with the two of you.
It's good to be back.
Good to be here.
Let's talk taxes, and specifically, let's talk about control. I love the fact that we actually do have some control here over that. And I want to talk about, what could we be looking at in terms of tax planning that does keep more of our hard-earned savings in our pocket?
Absolutely. I mean, that is such a key part to any kind of plan, is really looking at what are we going to do for taxes in your particular situation, because we want to make sure that we don't spend more money on taxes today or less today than that's going to cause us to of course, spend more money later. And so we want to make sure we're using those tax opportunities that we have. And, whenever we're working on taxes with clients, we always make sure that we're working with their tax professionals so that we have an integral plan that takes into consideration all of the opportunities that are there.
Okay, Matt, I've heard it said that taxes could actually be one of your biggest expenses in retirement. How can that be possible?
Well, it can be possible because the IRS wants to get their hands in on everything, and they make all the rules. But I love the way that we're talking about this when it comes to having control, because too many people feel like taxes are just something that happens to them, when the reality is you have more control of this than you think. The IRS sets the rules, but you get to determine how you navigate them. So a lot of people have spent their life putting money in pre-tax accounts and stuff like that, and that's great, but as you get older, that tends to sort of hurt you more than it helps you, and so a lot of our tax planning comes down to seeing if we can change some of that so that before they hit required minimum distribution age, or if they pass away, there's just ways to minimize it. But overall, taxes, I'll answer your question this way. If you don't make a plan, taxes will be the biggest expense in your life.
Okay, that's well said. So we have to be proactive. We have to do something. And that brings me to this question, Tom. We all know we have to get our taxes prepared every year, right? That shouldn't surprise anyone out there. But what's the difference between doing that tax preparation and doing what Matt suggests, which is tax planning? How are those two different?
Well, tax planning is forward-looking. When you're filing your taxes, you're filing those in April for the prior year. You're looking backwards. You're saying, here's what happened to me. And the problem with looking backwards is I can't make any changes. I can't, oh gosh, darn, I wish I would have. It's too late. What we want to be looking at and want to orientate our clients towards is really looking forward into the next year and 2 years, 3 years down the road, so that we are making sure that we're planning ahead with our taxes. We're thinking through those decisions. So it's really just a scorecard on our good decisions.
It sounds a little bit like one is you're looking out the windshield, the other is you're looking in the rearview mirror, and you're right. If it's happened already, there's not much you can do.
No.
It's really that forward-looking, proactive planning you were talking about. How are you informing your clients about this? Is this something you ask them to do on their own, or do you help guide them with some of that?
It is interesting to sit down with people and to ask them, as I'm getting to know them, hey, what kind of tax planning have you already done? Because I want to know what's in place before I mess something up. And most of the time, the answer that I get is, well, I have a CPA that files my taxes every year. And so that tells me right there, okay, again, we're looking out the back a lot. We're not really looking up front. So the way that we inform people is to let them know the rules that are in place that you can take a lot more advantage of in retirement. So I'll use another analogy here. Sometimes I'll compare this a little bit to war strategy, if you will. If you read a little bit of war history, you'll read that most of the time the people that won a battle are the ones that chose where the battle occurred, what piece of land and on what hill or whatever else. And so when it comes to taxes, you get to choose which rules you either used to your favor or whatever else. So what I'll guide them through is, hey, you're retired now. Which account do you want to take from? Should we do some conversions this year? When do we want to sell this property or this highly appreciated stock? You get to choose when all those things happen.
Okay, it's like a game of Battleship.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, you got to be the general of your own retirement and try to understand what hill, where are we going to do this? And the timing of this is important. And I go back to what you said. If it's already happened, it's too late.
Yeah.
So how early should people be starting to think about those tax implications as it relates to their retirement, Tom?
You actually can't start too early. And this really gets down to how am I saving my money? Because someday in the future, the government gets to tell you when you take your money out, and which is going to force some tax decisions, whether you like them or not. That's when we get into those required minimum distributions. So the sooner you start thinking about how am I going to, how do I want to pay my taxes? And when do I want to pay those taxes is the time we want to start working on that. I'd love to start working with all of my clients in their 50s, because now we've got a good road ahead of us. We've got lots of opportunity to make some changes there that we won't have if we start talking about when they're 73.
And we'll continue the conversation. The bad news is taxes can be a big expense in retirement. Of course, the good news, though, according to Tom and Matt, you have some options to help lower that tax bill. And they're going to explain even more about this topic when we come back. Stay tuned.
When it comes to planning for the future, time may not always be on your side. Think about your taxes. Tax rates are historically low right now, but they'll likely be higher in the future. With the right planning and strategy, you might be able to cut your tax bill in the years to come. But don't wait until it's too late to take advantage of today's lower tax rates. Let us be your partner in planning for tomorrow, so you can enjoy your retirement today.
Well, did you know taxes could be one of your largest expenses in retirement? It's true. It does catch a lot of retirees by surprise, and I don't blame them. It's a wake-up call for sure. And there are, though, ways to potentially lower that tax bill. I want to talk to the two of you about that. Tax savings options, Tom, when it comes to those, what are you sharing with your clients these days?
One of the simplest ones that we can turn to for tax savings is going to be what's called a Roth conversion. This is where taking some of those IRA funds that you have saved all of your life for and paying the taxes on those up front so that it can now start growing tax-free for many years into the future. It is a sometimes very small tax that we're going to pay for what could be a really good benefit either for you or potentially for your kids in the future inheriting that tax-free asset. But that's just one of many tools that we can look to really getting someone organized around how can they really benefit from doing some tax planning so that they are in control of that tax situation.
Okay, I've heard a ton about Roth conversions. Seems like they're becoming more and more popular. And Matt, I want to ask you about required minimum distributions. I'm just going to call them RMDs.
Yeah,
that's a little easier, right? But there are some tax implications here. Can you share those with us?
Sure. So in case anybody doesn't know, an RMD is what you have to do under current law when you turn 73. There's some people in the audience that may not apply until they turn 75. But basically what the IRS says to you is, hey, the game is up. You've been delaying your taxes long enough. Now we're going to force you to take money out of those. And a lot of people make the mistake of just putting it off and not worrying about it because they see the laws and the numbers and they say, oh, they're only making me take out like 3% of my balance, so no big deal. Well, that's true in the first year, but then what they don't realize is that every year it gets a little bigger. And so Tom's hinted at this before. If you don't do anything proactive about it, you'll get in a position where eventually the IRS is forcing you to take out huge sums of money that you either don't need, or even if you do need it, you're doing it at future tax rates that will more than likely be higher than they are today. And so we just don't want that to happen to our clients. With good planning, you can use Roth conversions, or you can just use different distribution strategies that allow you to minimize that so that when you get there, it doesn't hurt you.
Makes a lot of sense. And I would say this, Tom, if your current advisor isn't talking to you about some of the strategies that Matt shared, is that a red flag? Is that maybe a situation where you'd like to get that second opinion?
I always think getting a second opinion is important, especially going into retirement, because it's such a major transition. You may have worked with someone for a number of years in that accumulation of your assets, and that's the area that they're really good at. It's a lot like when you were with your kids. You took them to the pediatrician because the pediatrician knew what was going on. Well, as we get older, we eventually move to a doctor who is specializing in our healthcare, who sees patients like that. I think they call them geriatric.
General practitioners?
No, the older ones. But at any rate, we find these doctors who are specialists because that's what we need. And that's really what we're doing for our clients as well. And that's what someone should be looking for as they age. They need to be looking at that person that's going to help them really look at it holistically, look at those the retirement assets, and make sure that not only are we not paying too much in taxes, but that we're in a situation where we're going to be successful as we go into this next phase. And so certainly taxes are a large portion of that. As you mentioned earlier in one of our segments, that taxes can be one of your largest bills you pay. And if you don't play really well, your number one inheritor will be the IRS as well, not your kids.
It's true.
And so again, we really want to be thinking through, what does this mean? How do we make sure that the kids get the majority of the money and not Uncle Sam?
Right. Seems like a swell guy, but I don't want him to be the inheritor of my estate.
And just to add to what Tom said there, you mentioned, is it a red flag? We're not in the business too much of bad-mouthing other advisors. What we typically find is, it's like Tom said, that's just, they were good at that thing that they did. And that's wonderful. Now that you're at a different stage in life, we typically find that people need more advice than they were getting.
Oh, that's well said. Back to the doctor analogy, Tom. If you throw out your back, you're right. You're not going to the pediatrician.
No.
That makes a lot of sense. So find someone who is good at this area. I often hear you say accumulation and distribution. Or you could say, building your nest egg and then drawing from your nest egg. You got to be working with the right person to help you navigate all that. There's a lot to think about, that's for sure. Let's talk about where tax planning fits in the process at the retirement solution.
You bet, yeah. So it's an integral piece of it. You've heard us talk in the past about how income will usually come first, then some investments. Tax planning is usually right there in the middle. Doesn't mean that it's less important than the first two. It just means that there's a few other pieces we have to figure out first. Because once we know how much income you need, and then once we help you figure out the investments that you want, now that allows us to say, okay, well, this pre-tax money you have should go here, and this Roth money you have should go there. Or if you don't have any Roth money, the Roth money that we're going to help you make should occur in this bucket. And that's where the whole picture really starts to come together.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, right? So it's part of that plan, but you have to understand a few things first, and then you work that tax planning in. And I love how we talked about the fact that this is really about looking forward. Don't stop preparing your taxes. But for retirement, let's look down the road a bit so that we can be a bit smarter. And I think what we said was keep more of your money so you don't have to give it to Uncle Sam.
That's
all right.
right.
Well, Tom and Matt, a lot learned here today, and we're not done. So when we come back, Matt is going to take you through the history of taxes. And boy, is it interesting. So we want you to stick around for that. Find out what you can learn from what's happened in the past. Stay with us.
On the surface, your retirement plan might look solid. With your 401k or IRA, Social Security, investments, and insurance coverage, you appear to have it all covered. But what could you be missing? Below the surface, is your retirement exposed to too much risk? It's time for a deeper dive into your portfolio. We can help you uncover the risk that lies beneath the surface and learn about strategies to help preserve your savings. Get your free risk analysis today.
To understand where we're going, it sure does help to know where we've been. And that's true even when we're talking about taxes. The good news is we have Matt here. He's going to take us through the history of taxes to help us understand where we are in today's retirement landscape. That's in today's Retirement Minute. Matt?
Thanks so much, Megan. So for today's Retirement Minute, I want to spend a little bit of time going through some tax history with you. And sometimes people will say, well, Matt, why am I worried about what happened in the past? Let's talk about the way things are going to be or what might happen. Absolutely agree with you. The thing about the past is it does inform us somewhat on what may happen in the future. So if you'll bear with me for just a moment, we're going to nerd out on a little bit of tax history, and then that will lead us to some hypothetical futures and give us a bit of a mindset on how to approach this tax problem that we're dealing with. We've talked about minimizing them, making sure the IRS doesn't get more than their fair share. All of this is going to help us lead to that. Okay? So I'm going to start with a chart that I wrote up here that has some dates going from 1776 all the way up to 2050 and beyond. Okay? Now, you'll see that the dates here are by no means to scale. Pardon me, that's just my writing for the ease of this display. But let's start here in the very beginning, 1776. Hopefully this comes as no surprise. We're starting at the founding of the United States. Why am I starting there? Because you may be interested to know that income taxes were actually not part of the original founding of the country. The government didn't need them. The government had other ways of producing revenue, but personal income tax was not one of them. So one little bit of trivia that I'll ask my clients sometimes is, well, when did income taxes first come into play? That's where 1861 comes into play. But this is an interesting one because income taxes were allowed briefly then, but this is another bit of trivia that most people don't know. The Supreme Court actually struck those income taxes down and called them unconstitutional. And they were absolutely right, because one of the rules in the Constitution is that any tax, I should say, or any thing that the government does has to be proportioned to the population of the several states as it's written. So the government learned its lesson on that one, and then in 1913, two things happened. One of them was the 16th Amendment. And if you read the language of the 16th Amendment, you'll see in there that it says Congress has the authority to levy taxes on the states without regard to population. And it was only then that income taxes became part of what we experience today as American citizens. And so it started here as a pretty small tax, and also it affected very few people. It wasn't that big of a thing for most folks, but over time, this is what taxes do, and this is now leading into that mindset that I'll continue to go down. Taxes just applied to more and more people. They applied to more and more things as Congress said, hey, I like this tax revenue thing. We can just take a little bit here and there. They're always finding ways to get more. And that's the bottom line here. If we're going to have any mindset when it comes to taxes, and we've talked earlier in the program about attacking them and making sure that we choose when things happen to us, it's about utilizing today's rules to our advantage. Okay? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the rules are constantly changing. The reason I have 1984 up here, you may or may not already be aware of this, when Social Security benefits first became enacted in the 1930s, that was originally a tax-free source of income. You got it? Didn't matter how much other income you had, didn't pay any taxes on it. Until 1984, when the government said, hey, you know what? We kind of like that as a revenue source too, so we're going to start taking some of that as well. And even it has different rules today. It's not fully taxable like a pension or an IRA distribution, but it's still a change that was made that wasn't originally that way. Now, the reason I have 2024 up here is because not only is that a recent date, I'm going to draw you one more picture that, again, isn't to scale, but work with me here. Marginal tax rates, they go up and down, so that's just what this is meant to illustrate. One of the things that you need to know about retiring in this time frame when you're thinking about it, this is a time when marginal rates are historically low. Okay? My point here is that overall, taxes are always going up. The government's finding more ways to take more money from more people, but certain administrations will find ways to, grant favor or to win political points with various tax cuts or whatever. And right now we're living in one of those times. Tax rates today are historically low, and there are other things that we can take advantage of today. We've talked earlier in the program about Roth conversions, for example. Today, under current law, Roths are a tax-free way to invest. You could have 1,000 million% growth in them, and they will not be taxed. That is all true today. Will it be true in 2050 and beyond, or 2025 and beyond? I have no idea. And so this is the approach that we need to have when we're talking about taxes. We know the past, we know the mindset that the government approaches it with. We need to have a similar approach when we're sitting down with you building a plan to try to minimize what we can today. Back to you, Megan.
Up next, if you have questions about retirement, you're going to want to stay tuned. Tom and Matt, they have the answers. We'll be back.
Planning for retirement can be complicated. Helping create income that lasts, making sure your healthcare is covered, investing while managing risk, and don't forget about taxes. If you're overwhelmed, you're not alone. The good news is we have what you need to give you confidence to start planning for your ideal retirement, all in one convenient resource. You'll get answers to some of your biggest retirement questions in this easy-to-understand, practical resource. And best of all, there's no cost to you. Take the first step toward a confident retirement and get yours today.
How does your future look in retirement? When you don't have a strategy, the future might look a little fuzzy. But with someone asking the right questions and helping you learn where you truly stand, it can become easier to work towards your goals. You need a plan to help generate income that will last as long as you need it. And the first step to creating an income plan is an analysis of where you are now. Let us help you bring your retirement into focus with your free income analysis today.
And we're back, ready to tackle your retirement questions. We have Matt and Tom here, and they're going to be the ones to answer. We always get such great questions from our viewers, and you guys give terrific insight. So let's get right to it. We've got our first question that comes in from Marisol in Kennewick. She says, I know I have to be mindful of taking my RMDs at age 73. What retirement accounts are subject to RMD rules?
Okay, well, the easy answer to that question is anything you didn't pay taxes on up front. Now, the problem gets into there are lots of them. We all heard of 401ks. We have also, there's a 401as, there's 503bs. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of these different accounts that you may have put money into. And what happens in this situation is if we're not careful, is we can violate the rules by taking the required minimum distribution from one of the accounts and not the ones the way the IRS has. And so it's extremely important to really get organized first and then to decide where we're going to, when and how we're going to take those required minimum distributions. Because heaven help us if we also have a beneficiary IRA account thrown in there, one that you inherited from maybe a parent. So lots of opportunities for mistakes. And those mistakes can be painful in a tax situation.
I can see that.
Tom, just to add one more wrinkle,
Oh, no.
there are some employer-related plans that if you're still working, you don't have to take an RMD from.
Oh, yeah, that's the new rules, yeah.
Yeah, and so that can get messy. People will accidentally take them from ones they shouldn't. All speaks back to the idea of having a plan.
Indeed, and a planner, someone who can navigate this because it is ever changing, right? I think about the Secure Act 2.0. The rules keep kind of shifting around. So, boy, you don't want to get caught not knowing. All right, Tom and Matt, thank you. Our next question comes from Dale in Seattle. He says, my wife and I have certainly noticed the big jump in prices lately. We have some goals to remodel a kitchen. We want to put in a pool when we retire, but now we're worried about what prices will be when retirement comes. Do you have a rule of thumb to figure out so that we'll know if we can afford to do it?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so Dale, the answer to that is absolutely not. I'm wary of most rules of thumb. Some of them have some application, but in a case like this, there's no rule of thumb like that at all. Your remodel, the way you want it to look could be completely different than what someone else's is. And the cost of it, Dale's absolutely right, costs have gone up. Things are more expensive now. As to whether he can still afford it or not, we would have to look at that. One of the things that we're able to do that clients love is we can run scenarios that say, hey Dale, what if you spent, I'm just gonna make up a number, $100,000 on this remodel. What if you spent $200,000 on it? What if you spent $50,000? And we can see the implications that has on their future. And that allows someone to then make the decision for themselves.
Okay, so giving them options, and that's great to know that you can kind of run those and then you can decide, because it's true, you know, what a remodel costs today is certainly going to be different than what a remodel costs 10 years from now.
Yes.
Our next question from Jacqueline in Richland. She says, my husband and I are considering joining a retirement community that has different levels of care as needed. I'm worried about the price. What do you think of communities like that, Tom?
I will tell you, offhand, I think they are pretty amazing. I had one of my clients who I was working with actually was looking at a place in Arizona, and they bragged to have over 3,000 activities a month. Everything you can imagine, from horseshoeing to pickleball. And so these can be amazing communities. that allow you to spend time with people that you have a lot in common with you've never met before, and make some really good friends. They do allow for this opportunity that as we age, we get to move to a different location, maybe with a little bit more help than we had, but still have some freedoms. So they can be really, really great for the right person. Now, the costs are obviously going to be a piece we want to work into that. And that's where planning really comes into hand, because we can say, okay, what does that cost? How do they do these? Some of these are ones that are month-by-month payments. Others want a large investment up front. And can we do that and still swing our retirement? And those are things that we're able to put together in different strategies that the clients can look at and say, I like that answer, or, I had no idea doing that would have this effect on my retirement accounts or the inheritance I want to leave to my kids. But in general, I think they are really interesting. They're not grandma's rest home. These are really, can be really interesting places to spend some time when you're not with the grandkids.
Yeah, especially as the care shifts for what you're needing, right, as the years go by. All right. This one from Vince in Chelan. And Vince says, I'm 54 years old and my employer just offered a Roth 401k option. I'll probably work another 10 to 12 years. Is it worth switching to that from a traditional 401k?
Oh, okay. I love this. So any of my clients that have worked with me know that I get to be a bit of a tax nerd when we talk about this stuff, because it can be really exciting. The tax material itself isn't always exciting, but this type of situation is. So if I sat down with Vince, I'd say, well, I'm repeating the phrase again, it depends, but in general, I like the idea because you start to shift from deferring today's taxes when tax rates are probably lower than what you'll be paying later, and getting more money into those Roth accounts and experiencing more tax-free growth over the rest of their working years. Now, and at that age, that's a pretty perfect age usually to start thinking about it. It can depend upon other things that are going on in their world. We may even want to look at some conversions within the 401k if it allows it. But in general, yes, I would love to dig into that more.
All right, so if you have the option, it's worth thinking about.
Very much so.
Okay. All right, great insights today. Taxes really kind of center stage, and you can see why. Could have a big impact, and the good news is we have some control over that. So, Tom, Matt, as always, thanks for your time. Now, if you want to know ways to generate lifetime income, if you'd like some help reducing your tax bill in retirement, or simply helping to maintain your current lifestyle in retirement, we encourage you to reach out now. Start planning for your ideal retirement. For Tom Black and Matt Perrone at The Retirement Solution, I'm Megan Mozak. Have a great day and an even better retirement.